Hello again, it is I, Broderick Wallace. Welcome to part two. Uh, Apologies for my hideous broken ring finger on the left hand. Not much I can do about that now, but perhaps, as they say, everything happens for a reason. Anyway, I drink to your health. And as is usually the case, you press stop and then you realise, oh, there's this other whole thing. But I think it's good to have a divide here because they are separate, although they do belong together. And this one's more tricky. So I think this is the best way to do things. Now, this idea of Odin and the triplicity and the pillar of consciousness, talked about that in part one. So now we're going to go down a little bit further because Odin is also known as a god of death and the ancestors. In the mythology, Odin is described as having a blue cloak, and as some people express the opinion, and I agree, that this is symbolic of death, and this would be perhaps as the dead body would have been laid out, and a period of mourning and prayers and this kind of thing, ritual. Gradually the skin would have turned blue, and this would have been very, very striking, the dead turning blue. So I think that's correct. And if we imagine that after this process there would have been a sky burial perhaps, and the body would have been devoured by corvids, crows, ravens, magpies, this kind of thing, which also ties in beautifully, all these links going on here. Now, I'm coming from this perspective, this resonance, with the land and my own experience. So I'm always, I'm kind of rooted back in the Neolithic in my thinking as well. So this idea of the bones, after the crows, had finished, the bones being laid out in a passage grave, a tomb complex of sorts. So, whoever, see, this is one thing, names. I would love to know, and perhaps one day I will, what the ancient English name for Odin would have been. Perhaps I can, find this out by looking at, the Irish mythology, and or at least draw a parallel and create that resonance within my mind that may produce an answer, or at least a substitute. But that's cool. That's cool. That's not the issue right now. The issue is the idea, the archetypal idea, this idea of a god on all these different levels. So we go one level, excuse me, one level below into the underworld. Now, I can't really exactly say exactly or convey exactly what I mean and what I think I'm feeling, because it's evolving, it's developing, and I do spend more time in actual practice than I do in research, apart from obviously I'm always listening to podcasts all day. I'm quite well read, more so back in the day before I began meditation. I'm having a little word with myself, to engage in more reading as I move forward. But I do spend this time, this extra time, mainly in the meditation practice. So perhaps there's an advantage there. Anyway. I had a vision when I was very sick in the sick bed a few years back of not named, but the explicit knowing of, this is the same thing. This is Odin in the underworld. It was a kind of disembodied head, perhaps stone, with kind of like roots, growing, down, and mud and dirt. And now, this analogy of the seed coming from heaven, bear with me. Now, if a seed is buried in the earth, then its roots will stretch down into the underworld as it grows up towards the sun. Just, keep this image in mind. This will explain why we need to go below this kind of three-part division. This head in the vision was emanating a vowel, like into the, across the, this was echoing, throughout the halls of the dead, as these shades were, standing all around, bathed in this kind of ghostly, eldritch light. And at this moment, I was aware of a light behind me, and a familiar presence, and that's another story. But it left an impression on me. And you see, again, I have to kind of circumnavigate, really, because I just have to kind of lay these ideas out as they are developing on the edge of my mind, and so this path of Odin, it's known as the quickest path and the hardest path. This does tie in with certain modern forms of paganism, which you can listen to, people's opinions and people's journeys within these paths as we're trying to reconstruct and experience these things. There is a resonance with the historical fact which we can access, and real experience. We kind of have to meet in the middle, and this is very much my thing. We have to kind of meet in the middle and move forward and combine and reformulate. Now, Odin was also pierced with a spear, which this expresses the idea of trial and pain and difficulty. So going down before we go up. Now, perhaps this is the journey of the dead, going into the underworld before going up again. This is where the roots, and we can also think of the cliff off of the the tree of the Kabbalah as well. And this also relates to my Hermetic ladder in a previous video, where I placed Pluto below Malkuth. The idea of going down before we go up, the idea of experiencing hardship and trial, and this somehow being a quicker route, that once you have this wisdom from below, it speeds up the ascent. Now, if Odin is also a god of the dead and the underworld, if we take the notion that anyone can be Odin, anyone on a difficult spiritual path, perhaps that old man that that you meet, or that vagabond that you should be kind to, especially if he's only got one eye. I mean, look out for that. This can be, you can meet this character, you can be this character. So I guess what my mind's the way I'm trying to formulate this and bring this together is, Odin is also the ancestors. He is the dead and the wisdom of the dead, those who have traveled this path before, who perhaps through prayer and sacrifice we can you know, as one does as a pagan, we can receive their help, and also very importantly, strive to stand tall in their presence. So in this way, as Odin as the self, as I expressed in the previous video, as consciousness and the ascent, and you know, the path itself, he also exists in the form of the shortest route, the path of sacrifice and trial, and thus in the underworld, presiding over the dead, he is every ancestor that has already received the runes. I guess you might say. This is difficult. It's I believe that there is a parallel. There are links going on here, and it speaks to me. It speaks to my practice. It speaks to, you know, personal experience, and it seems to resonate out into the perennial tradition. So I'm definitely tired now. So good night. God bless. God's bless.